वेलकम टू वीलर्न में आपका स्वागत है. Topic for today's discussion is International Marketing Management, and we would be covering session 15. Topics to be covered are International Marketing of Services and Introduction, Services, its meaning and marketing challenges, International Trade in Services, International Marketing of Services, the strategies which are adopted, Assessment of Potential and Opportunities, Barriers to International Marketing of Services, General Agreement on Trade in Services, that's GATS. Introduction. Whenever there is a development in the country, there are certain indicators, and one of the indicators in any development of a country is the increase in the share of services. When the share of services in the country increases, any kind of economic activities, then it is one of the indicators that yes, there is a development happening in the country. This is also borne out of the fact that in all the developed countries, the share of services in GDP and foreign trade, it is very, very quite high. So when we talk in context of India, the share of India in world export of services, it is slightly more than 1% only. Here her comparative advantage has been established in several sectors. India is the world's most popular sourcing country for software professionals. Indian accountants and healthcare professionals like doctors and nurses, they have already established their credibilities. So many overseas countries, they are regularly sending their youngsters for studies and trainings in Indian universities and institutions. When we talk about services, marketing is not just related to marketing of products only. So the concepts, the techniques of marketing of product is equally applicable to services. Yes, there are certain adaptations that are to be taken care of. So recently services, they never found a place in a multilateral discussion in GATT or data or information relating to services. But it should always be remembered that marketing concept, as we've just discussed it, they are equally applicable to the services also. Services are those separately, they are identifiable, essential, intangible activities which provide want satisfaction and which are not necessarily to be tied up to sale of a product or another service. When we say a product is an object, a device which is tangible, which is seeable thing, which could be seen. A service is a deed, it is an arrangement to perform an act, right? Here, this captures the essence of the difference between product and service. Products are tangible, they are objects, whereas services are deeds, they are performance agreements. So when we talk about the core offerings of hospitals, for example, or hotels, or utilities, which comprise primarily deeds and actions to be performed, they are services. We can say transport and public utilities, alright. We say communication, we say electric, gas and sanitary services. Wholesale trade is there, retail trade is there, finance, insurance and real estate. Banking is also included in financing insurance. Credit agencies, Securities and commodities, they are clubbed under finance insurance. When we talk about holding and other investment services, they include hotels and other lodgings, personal services, miscellaneous expenses, legal services, health services, social services, right? We say service differentiated from product. How they are differentiated? First, intangibility. All products are tangible. They could be seen, they could be touched. Whereas services are intangible. They cannot be seen, they cannot be touched. When we say heterogeneity, it is very difficult to provide a consistent service to every consumer. Since it is a deed, there is no homogeneity in it. There is simultaneous production and consumption. The moment a service is produced, it is consumed at that very moment. So it is a very unique feature of a service. We talk about perishability. Perishability basically refers to the fact that services cannot be saved or stored. It cannot even be resold or returned, right? So this is basically in contrast to goods that can be stored or resold the another day or even returned if the customer is unhappy. Interdependence of products and services. When we say products differ from services in many respects. So there are many interlinkages between service and products in lot many cases. Say for example, they complement each other in lot many cases. So sale prospect of a product that are in need of substantial technological support and maintenance. So they complement each other. There are increasing recognition that yes, there is a complementary nature of service and products. Even manufacturing based industries such as automobiles or computers, they are also recognizing the fact that the role of service in improving the competitiveness of the product is very, very crucial. So in many industries where providing quality service is no longer simply an option, that has to be taken care of. Right? For example, there are good hospitals which use latest technologies and testing equipment. There are hotels which provide well-furnished rooms. TVs used for digital transmission. They are services, but yes, they are simultaneously providing goods as well. There are certain challenges in marketing of services. The traditional marketing mix is basically comprised of 4 P's. 4 P's for product, price, place and promotion. So these elements, they used to appear as the core in decision making. While all these 4s are interrelated, there is an optimal mix of the 4 factors for a given industry. Because there is a significant difference between goods and services, marketers of services face some distinctive challenges. What are these challenges? They involve around understanding consumers' need and expectations, and the efforts to keep promises needs to be understood. The consumer differences between products and services, they are also to be taken care of. While understanding the difference between products and services, we have tabularized them. Right? Tangible are goods and intangible are services. What are the resulting marketing implications? Service cannot be inventorized, they cannot be patented, they cannot be readily displayed or communicated, and pricing is difficult. Right? Another is standardized and homogeneous. Service delivery and customer satisfaction depend on employee action. Service quality depends on many uncontrollable factors. There is no sure knowledge that the service delivered matches what was planned and promoted. When we say international trade in services, over the last 3 decades, what has been observed that service sector has grown exponentially. So the contribution of services to GDP likewise has grown tremendously, and while the share of industrial and agricultural sector, they have seen a decline. When we share some facts, in almost all developed economies, services account for almost over 60% of GDPs. Export of services currently they account for about 1 trillion or about 15% of the world export. Now it is expected that the share of services in global trade might reach 50% in the coming decade and still rise frequently. Alright. Global imports of services, they present a picture similar to that of the export, where we can say that world's major exporting countries and the regions are also world's leading importers. So for example, the European Union accounts for almost around 42% of the world imports, which is followed by Asia with 25% and North America as 16%. There are services that are delivered mainly in conjugation, in comparison, in collaboration with products. Many times it has happened. So the most sensible approach is to follow the path of the product. For the service, they are delivered mainly in support that we have discussed. So what should be done? For years, many large accounting and banking firms have done so by following the major international clients or multinational clients to place where they had set up new operationals. Right? There are service providers whose activities are independent of products. A different strategy is suggested. What is this? It is advisable for them, for such service firm, to search for institutions abroad that are similar to those in the domestic market. There is another opportunity arises when countries undergo a transition. For example, when a new transportation services are introduced in the overseas country, an expert in containerism may exploit the opportunity and offer container service to improve the efficiency. Now, when we talk about potential services for international market, so first is financial services. They fall into basically two broad categories, insurance and banking, and cover a range of activities. Financial institutions, they offer some very important functions like which are competitively internationally in the field of mergers and acquisitions, security sales. Another area where that could be of great importance with great international potential is construction, design and engineering services. Here economies of scale can be affected not only in the sale of machinery and material but also in the overall management of the project. There are firms which are also dealing in legal and accounting services, right? In the field of computer and data services, international opportunities are rapidly growing. Knowledge of computer operation, data manipulation, data transmission, and data analysis can be exploited internationally. Also, communication services they offer substantial international market opportunities. For example, activities in the areas of video text or home banking or home shopping, they could be used. There is a substantial growth that can be expected in the field of human resource. Management consulting services, they can be provided to foreign institutions and corporations. Another is tourism in an increasing important area of service trade. So every overseas visitor who spends foreign currency on a vacation contributes to improvement in the current market. Health related and social services also have great potential for internationalization. India is increasingly participating in providing international data services. Although some skilled human service input, some aspect of the data field, they are highly technological advancement, they are intensively technological. There are many operations which still require skilled human services. So because of lower wages, Indian companies, they can offer data inputting services at a rate which is much lower than the industrialized country. When we talk about assessment of opportunities in India, so services, they have a major role in the manufacturing sector and other sectors of the economy. The role of what has been termed producer services is especially important because of their contribution to the competitiveness of goods and services. Services sector contributes significantly to employment. A framework on services will require a system of check and balance. Prominent among services with high potential, international growth potential are software and related services. And an essential aspect of commercial transactions involving software is a service linked to its supply, installation, maintenance and utilization. India can meaningfully contribute to various segments in the services sector. Internationalization of banking services has greatly expanded the scope for the provision of interbank services. Producers services sector is growing rapidly in the developing country, which helps corporations to raise their productivity and ultimately provide businesses. Transactional cooperation dominate international marketing in most various sectors. Now there are certain barriers to international marketing of services. First is legal barriers. Since because of production and marketing of services they're closely intertwined with the societies being served, often the barriers associated with trade in services are even more restrictive than those associated with trade in products. Marketers of service, they face a plethora of legal restrictions in the global market. So first is the quantitative and qualitative border prohibition and restriction. Here the simplest form of restrictions are those that affect the firms at the time of operations cross-border. For example, tariffs or taxes are often levied by one company, one country, when the advertisement or computer services are produced in another country. Others are laws and regulations discriminating against foreign firms. It is also a very common approach to protect domestic firms from foreign competition is to let foreign firms in but then discriminately restrict their operations. एक है direct and indirect subsidies to local firm. It is a more subtle form of protection from outside competition when a government subsidies to domestic workers and industries is levied. Infringement, copyright and trademark laws. So this perhaps is the most important from the perspective of American industry. Another is cultural barriers. Language becomes the cultural barriers because communication is an essential part of any international marketing mix. So language becomes the most important. Language of the customer is very appropriate. Therefore, the services marketer must communicate in the language of the consumer. Another is values and attitudes. When we talk about this, helps to determine what members of a culture think is right, important and or desirable. That should be taken care of. Another is manners and customs, material status, they represent a cultural view of appropriate way of behaving, mannerisms. Material culture, when we talk about, consists of tangible products of the culture, right? Cars, houses, clothes, furniture, they are the examples of material culture. Aesthetics, when we talk about, they refer to cultural ideas about the beauty and good taste. They are reflected in music and arts, dramas. Education and social institution, both kind of institutions are affected by and are transmission agents of culture. Education includes the process of transmitting skills and knowledge, and thus may take place in school and in less formal training. Cultures, they affect on consumer behavior. Given all kind of cultural differences associated with the delivery and marketing of services, it is a wonder that some firms are so successful in international market. When we talk about GATS is General Agreement on Trades and Services, right? Services had long been considered to offer less potential for trade expansion than goods. So this view has been confounded by the introduction of new technologies facilitating the supply of services. One of the major results of Uruguay round, inspired by essentially the same objective as GATT, they are improving trade and investment condition through multilateral agreement, stabilizing trade relations through policy binding on an F&M basis, achieving progressive liberations through subsequent round of negotiations. Who all are the members? All WTO members, which includes over 130 countries. Here, services which are not covered, they apply to all services except those supplied in the exercise of governmental authorities. They include the activities of central bank and the monetary authority. There are 12 sectors that are considered in it: construction, distribution, educational, financial, health, tourism, recreational, communication, transportation and other services. What are the modes of supply? Cross-border supply when we talk of. So it is basically defined to cover services flows from the territory of one member into the territory of another member. Another is consumption abroad, which refers to a situation where a service consumer or his or her property moves into another member's territory. Another is commercial presence. It implies that a service supplier of one member establishes a territorial presence, including through ownership or lease of premises in other members' territory to provide a service. Presence of natural person, it consists of person of one member entering the territory of another member to supply a service. Now there are basic obligations that need to be fulfilled. So there are general obligation. One is FN status. So members are held to extend immediately and unconditionally to service, or service suppliers of all the members treatments or no less than that accorded to like services. Another is transparency. So GATT members here are required to publish all the measures of general application and establish national inquiry. There are specific commitments which to be taken care of. One is the market access. So granting of market access is a negotiated commitment undertaken by individual member in a specified sector. Another is national treatment. In any sector included in its schedule of specific commitment, a member is obliged to grant foreign service and service supplier treatment no less favorable than the extended to its own like services and services supplier. Now when we talk about services schedule, Each WTO member is required to have a schedule of specific commitment. The necessary indications must be entered with respect to each of the 4 different modes of services supply. Most schedule consist of both sectoral and horizontal section. The horizontal section contains limitations that apply across all sectors including in the schedule. The sector specific section contains limitations that apply only at the particular sector, subsector or activity to which they refer. There are certain specific exemptions which are to be taken care of. So the first is the GATS allow member in specified circumstances to take or maintain measures in contravention of their obligation, which applies basically measures in reaction to serious balance of payment and external financial difficulties, measures necessary to protect public morale and humans, and measures necessary to ensure compliances with laws and regulations not inconsistent with the agreement. So the annexures on financial services entitle members, regardless of their provision of GATS, to take measures for prudential reasons, including the protection of investors, depositors, policy holders. There are special provisions. So the objective of facilitating the increasing participation of developing countries in services trade has been enshrined in the preamble to the agreement and underlines the provision of Article 14. This article requires members inter alia to negotiate specific commitments relating to strengthening of developing countries' access to distribution channels and the liberation of market access in areas of export interest to these countries. The GATS set out a work program which is referred to as built-in agenda. The program reflects both the facts and not all services related negotiation could be concluded within the time frame of Uruguay round. At the sectorial level, negotiations on basic telecommunications were successfully concluded in February 1997 and negotiations in the area of financial services in December 1997. What are the benefits to its member? It helps in overcoming domestic resistance to change. In any trade negotiations, countries are normally confronted with liberalization requests in the weaker sectors, while at the same time seeking to improve export conditions for the strongholds. Another is improving conditions for sectorial growth. International bindings help to enhance a country's location attractiveness for trade, and investors at these are protected for sudden policy changes. Promoting overall economic efficiency, there are many service sectors including transportation, telecommunication and financial services which cater not only to direct consumer demand but also provide the efficiency, that is enhancing input across a range of user industry. There are 2 exercises. Enumerate the basic strategies to start international marketing of services and what are the barriers to international marketing of services. Thank you and have a nice day. Keep learning, relearning.